I have been asked privately on occasion what it would take to better the world. Some have asked if there is one thing, one technique, that people could do to make the human reality, the shared human world, a better one. This is an incredibly complex problem, obviously, and there are no simple answers, because in the end the notion that things are black and white, simple polarities of things, is a wrong assumption. The world is made up of shades of grey, and as the complexity of the intellect grows, one realizes that these shades of grey only increase in number. With that in mind, there is one particular skill that I feel would not only help in our development as a species, but would also help us as individuals. Indeed, there may be no greater power in developing the individuality, and therefore human power in general, than in the mastery of this technique, which is interesting, because it is a skill that the world at large has on many occasions associated with weakness, and a lack of individual power. This certainly has to do with general definitions, and due to a lack of understanding as to what true mastery of this skill requires. For clarification's sakes then I will first give a term for this technique, define it, and correct the assumptive definitions that posit that it is a weakness, not a strength. This technique that could do so much to better this world is perhaps best termed empathy. Now, in accordance to the way this technique is employed by inner alchemy, this capability can be defined as the ability to completely identify with the other, to the point of actually becoming the other, and knowing that other intimately, while at the same time, not losing the most precious identity of self. This last point about maintaining self-identity is most important, and is perhaps the reason why empathy is considered dangerous, or weak in some circles. The reality, though, is that if properly mastered, empathy is the most powerful technique that anyone can learn. In order to illustrate how to begin to master this technique, I will quote directly from one of my website articles. I begin this article by asking why is it that when we were children, we seemed so far more understanding and wise. By this I don't mean to imply that children are wiser than adults, but that in certain ways, children are more open, more intuitive, more naturally apt at the game of life than is generally supposed by some. It is though a valid point to say that our simple joy and ability as children really came from the fact that we were so mentally guileless at that age, certainly. That we did not know the horrors of the world, and that we were literally innocent babes in a potentially hostile land. This can explain many things about a child's nature and a child's vulnerability, but it does not explain the full extent of this same child's ability to see and perceive in ways that adults in their prejudice could not even conceive. If you remember back, truly remember back to what it felt like when you were a child, you will remember that there was far more to it than just a simpleton's mind. If you truly remember, you will realize that children seem to have a far greater connection to the world than adults do. Children seem to have this trusting connection, and this greater understanding that we as adults seem to lose as we clog up our minds with the many facts that allow us to participate in this world. Children have a natural type of identification that allows them to perceive the world in a far deeper and richer way than adults can. Why is it that children have such a rich connection while we as adults seem to be like aliens living in a foreign world? The reason for this, I believe, is that we have lost our empathic connection to the earth and to all of the beings around us. Empathy is usually given a rather unfair definition. Empathy is usually seen as this negative characteristic that is quite feminine and weak. This is highly incorrect, not to mention the fact that characterizing something as weak just because we perceive it as feminine is highly flawed indeed. Empathy is neither feminine nor masculine. Empathy is a highly practical capability that can allow you to develop a sixth sense that can give you a great advantage. An empathic person can tell you what another person is feeling and thinking. They can have a sense about what is good and bad, and they can discover trouble or reward within any environment. Those that are empathic enough can sense profit or ruin, and therefore have an advantage over those that have no empathy at all. Many fear empathy because it is believed that those that are empathic will somehow lose themselves in their intuitions. It is seen as weak because in a world where we are taught to crush our enemies, it is never a good idea to be able to feel that crushing ourselves But even in this, the definition of empathy is wrong, not that I wish to propagate the crushing of enemies as such, but it is wrong to think that you will be lost through your empathic visions. A skilled empath can feel others and the world around them, but at the same time understand they are also able to maintain their separate identity, their separate individuality. True empathy does not mean being lost in the emotions or feelings of others, but it is the ability to understand the reality of the self and of the other at the same time. So why is it that children seem to be such wise little people? Why is it that children seem to be continually happy and at one with their environment? The biggest reason for this is because they have not tainted their connection with the other, and as a result are highly empathic beings. You can regain this connection, you can have an individual life, a life of deep understanding, and a life of complete and joyous self-identity. To do this, what you need to do, interestingly, is to learn to play as children do. If you ever watch children playing, you will notice that they love to pretend. They will pretend that they are pirates or soldiers, they pretend that they live far into the future, or that they are from the great past. They may even pretend to be animals, objects, forces of nature. What children are wonderful at, is discovering themselves, outside of themselves. This is what you must do, and this is what empathy really means. It is the ability to discover yourself, outside yourself. It is the ability to see the other as clearly as you see yourself, and in that unity, allow your true self to blossom. In order to develop your empathic abilities, you must also do the same thing. You must use your imagination, and playfully pretend that you are something or someone else. You could, for example, pretend that you are the same person that you are right now, but that you are 100 years in the future, at exactly the same place where you are right now. Use your imagination now, and try to imagine what it would be like to be at exactly the same place you are now, but 100 years in the future. Look at a friend and try to imagine what it would be like to be your friend right now. Look at a tree, a chair, a cloud, and try to do the same thing. Use your imagination to pretend that you are a parent, if you are not already one, and explore your feelings, and how you would feel if this were the case. Imagine what it would be like to be an incredible genius that can solve all the problems of the world. Imagine what it would be like to be homeless, to be a gypsy, to be a sailor, a sad pet, a mistreated plant, a happy one. Imagine being all things. If you have ever watched children play, you will also notice that they like to pretend to be things that you might find quite repulsive. Children, for example, like to pretend that they are dead, or that they are so old that they can barely move. You should do the same and extend your mind, and pretend things that at first you may find quite difficult. Pretending what others would act like if you died is a wonderful children's game that many kids play, and perhaps you should too. I know some of this might seem difficult, but it's a wonderful way to discover yourself outside yourself. Also try to pretend that you are different objects or different things in the world. Try to imagine that you are a lake and feel what it would be like to have people on you, swimming inside of you. Imagine that you are a rock, or that you are a bird flying really high up in the sky. Explore your feelings while you're doing this and discover in this way what it would feel like to be something completely different from yourself. These simple games, done with a fun and playful spirit, can teach you a great deal about the people and the world around you. You might be very surprised at what you discover, and I can guarantee you that if you pursue this game with an open spirit, you will find great wisdom inside yourself. By understanding the world through your empathic vision, you will quickly learn a better way to deal with everything around you. Become the wind, the sunshine, and the trees. Discover in this way what it is to be what you truly are, a child of the earth and the stars. Children are never lonely, and they always seem to have fun wherever they go. You too can have this kind of joy, delight, and wisdom. Learn to play like you used to and rediscover the wisdom that you had forgotten. If you would like to explore these techniques and more advanced skills, I will recommend the book, The Occult Experience. If you enjoy that, You may even be ready to explore the more difficult aspects of our reality, and even more advanced skills, which I cover in the book, Overcoming the Archon Through Alchemy.